my name is simply Lucie, and I'm from the University of Economics, and I was somehow part of the project as well. It was really a pleasure to work with such a great team, and I'm really, on one hand, happy that we are here now closing successfully the project, but on the other hand, it's a pity to lose such a cooperation, so it was really, really perfect. Actually, you can also find the presentation on the mediation platform that Dana was introducing in the first presentation. It's the same topic. We have slightly amended it during the years, but basically the focus is still the same. So it's basically a kind of summary from our research we've been working on during the research as part of this project. So what is quite important, or based on the content, maybe I will skip it, I will just take you through easily. On the right side of this slide, I'm kind of proposing a process. So when we are choosing a mediator, I would actually say that the first very important step is just to sit down and think about the objectives and outputs of the mediation, what we basically want. Then definitely in different countries we have different organizations, we have different lists of mediators. So get this list of available mediators, have a look at them, and of course in the next step look for some qualifications, read some references, ask people about how the cooperation was working, and so on and so on. Then definitely I would recommend to have a personal face-to-face interview with a mediator because you will then know how you feel with that person, and definitely at the end just sit down again and evaluate and assess all the information you've received. Based on the research I was doing on this topic in this area, somehow recommending to focus on 3 parts, which is basically the left part of the presentation. So a kind of personal assessment area, subject matter expertise, and a kind of quality assurance check. That's also important. So basically those 3 areas are the kind of content of the presentation. In the personal assessment area, I'm kind of recommending a set of questions we should be asking either ourselves or someone who is working with us or the mediator directly, depending on what it is. The first part we should be, in my opinion, interested in: does the mediator establish rapport quickly with you or with your client or with whoever is involved? So this is about these kind of soft, not skills, but the kind of feeling we have from that person, the way how he or she speaks, a use of language, mode of speech. We must feel comfortable, and that's probably the key message. The second one, does the mediator listen carefully to what the parties are saying? In all of the publications, in all of the presentations, and in all the practice, you basically hear that the essential skill is listening. This is what's definitely something very important for the mediators. So they should not talk so much, and they should be really listening carefully. So that's definitely something we should focus on when we are working together, not jumping into conclusions and so on and so on. I also believe that a good mediator should decline the work if he or she does not feel properly trained, or actually the second part is somehow connected with it as well, if he or she does not feel capable of undertaking it. This could be actually anything. This should be the lack of knowledge I'm feeling in the subject matter area as a mediator. This could be also basically the third part, the fact that I have somehow investigated a conflict of interest, so I know someone from the parties, I know the lawyers involved or whoever it is. So any situations like this should be not only identified, but also mentioned to the parties and a solution offered, and so on and so on. Also, I believe that it's really important that if we already have parties who are involved in mediation, they should basically receive a really good clarification on what mediation is about. So the mediator, a really good mediator, should take you through the process at the beginning, explain not only what is the process about, but also why mediation, how it can help you in a specific situation. So this kind of introduction is also essential, I believe. Then Also, what are the pros and cons of mediation? That's partly covered in the first area as well. Also the logistics. This could be actually anything. This could be documentation, rooms, where you will meet, how you will be meeting, frequency, time capabilities, basically anything around, even such a, I would say, like, not very important area from the first side, but it's actually crucial for the mediation itself and for the relationship between the parties. Informal chat about the process, so this is also something we've already kind of like mentioned. It's also important, I believe. And pricing structure and further information in situations where some kind of like red flag is being raised. It can be the conflict of interest or a lack of knowledge or anything like this. And pricing structure, that's critical, I would say. Transparency and visibility is the kind of like cornerstone for building trust, so that's part of it as well. In the second part, I've called that subject matter expertise, and this is basically about the fact whether the mediator has to have some kind of specific knowledge, which is the basically cornerstone of the dispute itself. I believe it's not important. It's not the essential part. It may actually be, based on my experience, it may actually be better in some of the cases, because then the mediator does not fall in, I've called that like into the trap of making any assumptions. What is crucial, I believe, is preparation. So a good mediator has to like prepare herself or himself, do the research. They have to be able to use the terminology, the correct terminology, and so on and so on. But they do not have to be experts in the subject matter area. Of course, you might have more difficult cases, usually commercial cases, and then if you have like two roles, like a lead mediator and a co-mediator, then it might be useful when some of them is in that subject matter, he's a professional or he has the specific knowledge, and then the other one not. This is also, or any combination like that, this is also working well in practice. And quality assurance check, that was actually mentioned by Agne already a little bit from like one of the legislation's perspective. It's basically about the training. It's about how much time I'm dedicating to some kind of, like we call it CPD, the continuous professional development. It's about how much time I've spent with more mature colleagues, more mature mediators, whether I was actually doing mediation in practice, and so on and so on. So I'm like kind of like offering a set of like qualification questions or areas we should focus on. And as I've mentioned, the presentation is also available on the platform, so you can anytime have a look into those details. Maybe one last note towards this slide, codes of conduct. They are definitely important. From my experience, most of them, even they have different names, they are almost the same, so they should basically touch the very general usually ethics principles as well, not only, but it's somehow connected with ethics. So whichever code it is, there should be something in place. You should definitely get familiar with it, and probably for most of us in this room, it's good when it is somehow in line with the European code, but it could be any other solution as well. And insurance, definitely something we should focus on. Quite an interesting question when you are doing research in this area is whether lawyers should serve as mediators, whether this is the best possible solution or not. It's actually quite a nice topic, but like, you know, the kind of like theories which go against is that usually the public perception is that a lawyer is a lawyer, and if he's a mediator as well, there is no difference. People just cannot see the differences. So this is maybe something we should consider. And also, then mediation, in my opinion, is about practicing, doing it in reality. So if you have like a really qualified lawyer who is a legal practitioner, then it might be tricky to have time for mediation as well. Of course, I'm not saying this is the case of like, you know, most of the lawyers, but it can happen. So these are, I believe, the two aspects we should consider. But on the other hand, I personally know lots of people who are very active in both of the areas, and to my opinion, this works well. So it's always about like a kind of like personal assessment in that specific situation, in that specific case, considering specific people. This is basically a kind of summary on what I've said. So this is, and I believe this could be quite practical, a kind of like checklist when we are choosing a mediator, which areas we should focus on, and specific questions we should be asking ourselves. So it's really a kind of like summary. The very last column is something I really see as the most important part, and that's like the kind of intuition, the feeling we have. But basically, these are the areas I've somehow mentioned: communication, rapport building, conflicts of interest, organizational skills, and all of those areas. The other slide is a kind of summary for not choosing, but assessing the mediators, because most of us, we can be in like both roles. We can be using mediation, or we are mediators, so it could be both ways. So this is how people can assess us if we are mediators. So these are definitely the areas we should work on. And as I've said, it's like quite theoretical parts, as well as simple tasks such as arranging for rooms, making sure there is a kind of like refreshment. These all are very small things which are critical for how people are feeling during the mediation process and all the discussions around. So this is a second checklist I'm offering. It's available on the platform. So just to sum up, rapport building, definitely one of the most important area. Listening skills, that's also something I would highlight in such a soft topic. Then the kind of like, you know, knowing my own limits and the limits of the others, including conflicts and so on. Organization, those people I believe need to be very like punctual, so that's also important. And least but not last, how we feel about the whole situation. These are the to summarize the areas I consider as very important in terms of the quality check I've mentioned. And that's pretty much it. You also have some references here. So that's it. Thank you very much.